call this special meeting of the Raton City Commission to order on Wednesday, July 22nd at 4 p.m. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Mayor Chatterley.
Present.
Mayor, oh, I have the wrong name there. Mayor Pro Tem Honeyfield.
Here.
Commissioner Schuster. Commissioner Campbell.
Here.
And Commissioner Hoger.
Here. All right. We don't have the Pledge of Allegiance on this agenda, so
I apologize.
we'll still say it. Please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I believe, Mr. Segato, we're going to move item A to the bottom and start with B, C, and D, since those are shorter items in the agenda. If that's agreeable to someone, I would love to entertain a motion to amend the agenda to move item 3A to the bottom of the action items.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we will start with item A is now public hearing, fiscal year 27 budget workshop and discussion. Mr. Scott, any comments before a public hearing?
It's Commissioner Mayor, we're getting to that point where we have to turn in the final budget now. Michael Ann is working diligently to get final numbers balanced and all of that. And the deadline's coming fastly upon us, but we should have it ready to go by the Tuesday meeting. And I will turn it over to Michael Ann.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commission. As Mr. Scott has stated, I have reconciled the financials. They're not 100% complete, but at least I know everything is in balance. And as we've talked before, our ending cash as of June 30 will roll forward to be the beginning cash for the final budget. So those are kind of the numbers I'm working on right now. I'm kind of stalled a bit just trying to finish submitting grant reimbursements and calculating how much we're going to have to transfer to cover some of these outstanding grant reimbursements as of June 30. So once I kind of clean up that piece, then I'll be able to make all the transfers. And then also for the final budget, anything that we do as a temporary transfer to cover something through June 30 then has to be rebudgeted in the new fiscal year budget. So I'll be tracking all of those changes. With regards to the interim budget, we did receive approval from the state, and so we're currently operating as of July 1st on the interim budget. I was reviewing the changes that I'm making, and so we were informed that the water department will be transferring a residual payment to us just slightly over $51,000. So that's something that will factor in to the final budget. I also have several grants that have come in since we last discussed the budget. So you recently approved the E911 grant. That was $258,439. We do have a small balance on the Trails Plus grant that will be closing that one out here soon with the final reports. The City Hall Foundation project, we do have just a small punch list of items that they'll be finishing up on that project, so I'll need to rebudget some money for that. We did move the billboards out of lodgers tax into the Economic Development Fund. That's about $25,000. We are still kind of waiting announcement on the grow funds and some of that we talked about this year for lodgers tax. So we'll kind of see how we start the new fiscal year out. Humane Society Services Agreement, I'll be factoring that new agreement into the final budget. We also have committed to monthly dog food purchases, which will be about $10,000 this year. Water Trust Board, the debt service payment will start in FY27, so I'm working on the amortization schedule to get all of that information in the budget. This week we did submit the grant agreements or actually the applications for the taxiway A resale project. So once I get all of that back in the form of an agreement, I do have figures that I can put in the budget. I just am unsure on what the city's match will be. So kind of waiting on that. Next Tuesday, the commission will see proposed roof repairs, quotes prepared by J3 Roofing for City Hall, Schuler, Welcome Center, and Aquatic. Those would come out of various funding sources. Obviously, Schuler and Welcome Center could come out of the lodgers tax non-promo. And then we have other funds for City Hall and Aquatic, but those are just shy of $86,000. So we'll be looking at that. We do have the animal shelter bid that was just awarded. That's a little over $217,000. Jason was successful in getting 2 more DOT co-op grants. One for $112,500 to purchase base course for streets and alleys, and then the other one was portions of North and South 4th and North 1st Street, and that one was $312,746. Now, those do have match components, so I'll have to budget $37,500 for one and $104,249 for the other. I do believe that gas tax will be able to support those matching funds. And then we also were awarded a Clean and Beautiful grant, $12,000. We approved earlier in the year a striker contract. I don't remember the term, if it was a 3-year, that was for EMS, and it's about $69,000 a year. We approved the IT services contracts, and then also we have a project going out to bid this week for the City Hall ADA and security improvements. So I just kind of have a placeholder at like $60,000 on that. Also, some of the ADA improvements would be in this room as well. So that's kind of the rundown and the list that I have thus far. I did have a meeting with our budget analyst last week, so we just kind of went over what the city's final budget looks like and what we need to submit with that. So it would be the resolution or investment schedule. They have a new contact form. And I think most everything else, probably personnel schedules if we make revisions to that. But most everything else got submitted with the end of the budget. So I think we should be in good shape. When I was talking to the city manager today about the grants, we were kind of looking over our summary year-to-date for this fiscal year. The reimbursements total about $11.5 million. So we've been really busy with a lot of grants. They do take up a lot of our time, so it doesn't matter really if it's a $20,000 grant or $1 million grant. That kind of, the paperwork kind of, it can be time consuming even on the smaller grants. So anyway, we're trying to make our way through all of that and make sure that we stay on top of these reimbursements. So, but over a 10-year period, we've successfully been reimbursed for $41,288,000 in various grant funds. So I keep a little spreadsheet just so I can keep track of what's outstanding, and if I haven't received the funds, then I can follow up with the agency. Other than that, I will say that when we get to the next item, I do not have the budget adjustments finalized, so my recommendation will be to postpone till Tuesday. But I stand for any questions, any other things that I may have failed to mention that should be included in the final budget.
Questions?
The J3 contract for the roofs, that 86,000, that's per roof, or?
No.
So these are just repairs, not replacements?
Yeah. So I think this building might be in the $20,000 range. I didn't bring the quotes with me, but yeah, they'll be on the agenda for Tuesday. But the total for those buildings, what did I say, it was close to 80, where did I see that? $85,333 for City Hall, Schuler, Welcome Center, and Aquatic.
And J3 is under the state contract and CES, so we can go that route.
Do we have any plans for the valve box on the north side of this building? Has anybody looked at that yet?
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell, Lloyd, myself, and Scott Berry looked at that issue last
I'm not sure if they wrote it out, if somebody busted it out. Looks like they broke it out. Why, I don't know. It is that side that feeds through there. We're looking at working with Lloyd and some other ones and see what they could do inside there and just monitor from there. We were gonna check that meter too.
Done intentionally to tie the fire line in. I'm not necessarily sure that it'd be a good idea to fill it back in with concrete or dirt. It looks like they've intentionally knocked down the north wall, removed the cinder block from the vault. I don't think the vault's in danger of imminently collapsing, but it doesn't appear to be a situation that's unintentional and eroding the building. It's just a cavern that looks like somebody put there intentionally.
And he was gonna check the meters equal in this building, because I think there's two. He was gonna see what's going on. We were questioning how that one was tied in, even that 2-inch meter. But it looked like, so we were gonna, Lloyd was gonna look at some of it, and I don't know if he's done that yet, but water department is aware of it and monitoring it.
Just seemed a little excessive, the size of the meter for.
Yeah,
service.
for City Hall.
Yeah.
But I'm
Well,
assuming,
even when it was a Safeway, it's like.
I would assume it was a meat market thing or something, I'm not sure what it is.
Maybe.
But it's a heck of
Yeah,
a,
'cause it looks separate from the fire line, which looks like a 6-inch inside the building.
6-inch fire line comes in the back wall of the building. That's why you look at the street, there's 2 water lines coming into this building on that side, and I believe there's one on the other side of the building also.
And then one other project we're rebudgeting that wasn't completed in FY26 is the HVAC for the education building.
Any further questions? Thank you, Ms. Antonucci. So this is a public hearing as well. If anybody would like to make any comments on the budget for fiscal year 27, now is your time to do so. Okay. Seeing none, we will move on from our new item A and go to our new item B, deliberate and act on resolution 2026-38, fiscal year 26, final budget adjustment number 13. It's been suggested that we postpone this. If someone would like to make that motion.
I move to postpone Resolution 2026-38, fiscal year 26, final budget adjustment number 13.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to postpone the budget adjustment. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The new item C, deliberate and act on recommendation to reject bid received for the Railroad Depot Phase 1 project. Mr. Scott.
Madam Mayor and Commission, we have Mr. Phillips here to discuss this project. As you know, we went out for bid on the renovation of the depot. The bids came in a little over what we have money for. So the suggestion from Mr. Phillips is going to be that we reject that bid and rebid. So I'll let him fill you all in.
So, Mayor and Commission, you have the detailed breakdown of available funding. Included in the $1,489,000 is our matching fund, which is several $100,000. So with that, we still have a shortfall on this bid of $299,000. We have a situation with a single bid, which I never feel real great about, knowing that that's the right price. I currently don't feel great about recommending general fund reserves being brought to bear in the amount of $300,000 to make this project a go. It's been difficult to get both BNSF and Amtrak to really cooperate fully on this project. You know, my goal is to save the structure of the depot for future generations. I mean, the original scope was an intent to rehabilitate the living spaces where Amtrak resides, put in bathrooms, those are all in here. And if I had better partnership, I would maybe advocate more on their behalf, but at this point, you know, as a city-owned building with leases that are perpetual and have zero rent, I'm not going to advocate for that. I would like to work with the architect to repackage this on a smaller scale, attempt to get more bids at a smaller reduced scope, bring this project in at the minimum over the grant funds as possible. I think that will preserve the shell of the depot, put a roof on it, upgrade it, leave it in better hands, and we'll maybe seek funding in the future on other items, but that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Any comments, questions for Mr. Phillips on this?
So right now, Jason, Amtrak manages this thing? I mean, are they the ones that are responsible for opening the lobby, closing the lobby?
They open and close the lobby, yes, that
But
they do.
The cleaning and maintenance and whatnot?
The cleaning is them, maintenance is kind of a mixed bag. We clean the platform and remove snow from the depot structure itself. They remove snow from the platform. BNSF, for the most part, has no operations in the building. They've just left a bunch of rubbish behind for us to kind of work around. And we've reached out to Amtrak asking that they perhaps provide porta potties and a mobile office type setup to function as a waiting room, because there's no way to really do this work and not affect everybody in the building, because a lot of it's structural. On top of that, a cost that's not included in this is, in the 11th hour, we received a report from BNSF that this building has asbestos containing materials, lead paint. I've got 3 quotes to sample the building. We'll have to do some remediation outside of the scope of this project. I do have around $100,000 in a previous depot design grant that I was hoping to use for construction management. I'll probably repurpose some of that for the remediation of lead and asbestos before we repackage this thing and go back out. We're gonna lose some stuff that's probably a little vital. I mean, we would have done windows and doors, but we're doing structural repair that has to be done. With it, it has to be done before you re-roof this building, and then HVAC systems are pretty much paramount, and electrical upgrade. So we'll probably end up cutting out the door and window package, which is worth about $300,000, and have a structurally sound building with not great windows and doors. But in that case, it would still have included the bathroom renovations, and provided that Amtrak will work with us, the depot lobby renovation.
Do you think is the architect kind of friendly?
They are, and we may be required to pay them some additional money that I have in the previous grant to repackage this. We fight what we always fight here. Locals don't really love the project. It's difficult to roof. It's got some tougher materials to work with, because SHPO has required us to have a material that mimics the original tile, but the structure of the building can't support tile. So we have some specialty roofing materials on some really weird transitions, a lot of flashing. It actually has to have a TPO membrane installed under half of the roof even to go over it with this, to avoid the flash damming and rotting of those. So it's a tough project. Didn't have a lot of interest at the pre-con. They kind of withered away or the pre-bid, and they kind of withered away as we went. Few people that we expected to bid that held plans opted not to. We're hoping that maybe that would change. We haven't worked with Northeastern Construction before, but I know that on that same day we opened bids on the animal shelter project, and they were the high of 3 bids on that one. So perhaps Stoven, Franken, somebody comes into play in the second go round, or even at their current pricing, if we just remove windows and doors, we're closer to budget. You know, bringing 50,000 is one thing, bringing 300, that's 20% over. That's the kind of math that doesn't usually work.
It kind of pushes down the usage too. You know, I don't know how many ticket holders use the lobby of that thing. And once Philmont closes for the season, it's
No, and it's tough for me. I mean, the value of this building is more in postcard than in functionality. I mean, the reality is Amtrak operates out of a Morgan Shed ticket booth, and we open the lobby for a couple of hours for people to sit there. I mean, if I'm selling it in a grant, we talk about the $17,000 Boy Scouts that come through. The reality is they hop off the train into a waiting bus to go to Philmont immediately. So, you know, the story of the depot is different than the reality of the depot, but I mean, if we had 300,000, the $89,000 worth of roofs that just listed are far more a priority to the everyday life of the city.
Thank you. Any further questions?
What do you think your timeline to rebid would be?
Conservatively, probably 3 months before we repackage and get back on the street. If the asbestos surveys take place timely and we can remediate it, at that point, we might make a decision whether we want to include remediation cost in the repackage and put it under the general contractor, which we know that just increase usually a 15% markup in overhead. But by the time we restart the process with, you know, a new bid package created and then, you know, 30 to 45 days for them to examine the bid documents, we're pushing several months.
Yeah, because it'd be nice though if time limits in there, if you could have additional bidders that possibly have freed up some work or something that could bid it.
And I mean, if we had a couple bids that were right back to back, I might lobby harder for the $299, saying that that's the true and correct cost. It's just so far over the architect's estimate that, you know, something's got to give.
Item A to the end. Oh, we started here. Yeah, great, thanks. Anything further from Mr. Phillips? Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I would entertain a motion on new item C, deliberate and act on recommendation to reject the bid received for the Railroad Depot Phase 1 project.
I recommend that we reject the bids received for the Railroad Depot project, Phase 1 project.
Second.
A motion and a second to reject the bid received. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We'll now move on to discussion, potential zoning, and ordinance amendments. Mr. Scott.
Madam Mayor and Commission.
Madam Mayor, before I exit briefly, if your phone starts ringing anything like mine does, just to make you all aware, there's an incident on South Second Street right now where a material supplier has deposited a significant amount of concrete and aggregates on the roadway. Not a city project, not a city problem, but it is a threat to health and safety, so city crews are out there actively attempting to clean up this mess from a public safety standpoint, but it has nothing to do with us. We've informed DOT and the contractor is aware of it. They don't have forces available to mitigate it. We will attempt to recover costs associated with the overtime in the operation, but we can, in good faith, leave our people at risk just because it's not our responsibility. So you'll see city people out there. You'll have pictures of us cleaning it up. Not our accident, but we're just jumping in. So
And you're saying it's concrete that,
looks like it's a mix of concrete and aggregate.
And where is it located?
It is northbound 2nd Street from approximately Legion Drive to Hereford Avenue.
all the way through town.
If you're out there listening, be careful on your way home. I mean, but we've already received a number of calls about it from concerned citizens, so. But we're out there and I'm headed to figure out what it is. So, thank you.
Mr. Sabata.
Madam Mayor and Commission, in your package, you know, this is our workshop tour. We're going to discuss the ongoing ordinance preparation and that for data centers. You do have a draft of one that Mac and Jaden have worked on, as well as Commissioner Holder. I think all of us have had a hand in it at one point or another. We have that before you. You also have copies of the recent moratoriums that were passed by Socorro County and Santa Fe County, just as a guideline in that for that. But going through the data center, proposed data center ordinance and that, made a couple of notes and comments in that. Overall, the document seems pretty fair to both parties. It kind of leans more protective to the city, of course, and that's the way we like it. So, but what seems fair is, requires public hearings and review through the Board of Adjustment. But I've got to ask, what are we thinking there with the Board of Adjustment? So, and Mac is here to kind of guide us through that.
Mayor and Commission, good evening. So the thought with the Board of Adjustment is the zoning board.
Okay.
They're one and the same.
Okay.
So the idea is that we are treating this data center special exception like any other special exception that we do for zoning. And that is in an effort to make everything equal for all types of parties. So what happens in a special exception is it goes before the zoning board. As you can tell, there's a list of procedures and things they have to have in order to apply. And then once the zoning board considers all these things and makes a decision, anyone can appeal that decision to the city commission. So that decision can be appealed and then it comes right back to you. So I talked it over with Brennan and I said, the city commission is going to want a hand in this. They have the pulse on what the citizens want. And his response is, hey, the reason I structured it this way is we don't want to seem like we are making a special case out of data centers more than the ordinance already does. We are treating it exactly like any other zoning issue. And he said he put it in there specifically that appeals would go to the city commission, so that you will still have ultimate say in what happens.
And I might suggest, instead of calling this Board of Adjustment, then we call it the zoning board and that, so to avoid confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought, are we creating another board or something here?
I just wondered how the other ordinances read. If they read Board of Adjustment, we probably want to keep it the same as every other ordinance.
Some of most of them say Board of Adjustment, right? And some of them say zoning board.
Some of them do say Board.
But yeah, it's both. The bulk of them say Board of Adjustment, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And I've
So,
never heard that
yeah.
term.
I think it just, maybe we can clean that up in the future.
Yeah, I think we need to.
Or we can also put it in the definitions that the Board of Adjustment is the same as the zoning board, just to clear everything up.
Other things that are in here that it protects residential districts through these zoning limits and setbacks. It addresses common data center impacts like the power, water, noise, traffic, lighting, screening, decommissioning. It does allow the board to impose additional conditions when needed to protect public welfare. Some of the things that are favorable to a data center would be it doesn't ban data centers completely, outright. It does create clear size categories and defines where each may be allowed. Gives applicants a defined special exception pass, and it, as Mac just stated, it does allow appeals to the city commission. Potential concerns, is a little bit of vagueness, especially the community benefits agreements. Where it says other community benefits and broad authority for the board to kind of impose additional requirements. It doesn't have anything specific, that could be a catch. The suggestion for the power, water, acoustical, and decommissioning, more than likely if we had measurable units applied to those. And the one thing that I found kind of confusing with the definition, small, medium, large definitions, it says and/or. We might be more specific if it's 1 megawatt and less than 10,000. Because say that's for the small, and the medium is what was it? Less than 20,000 and greater than 10,000. Where's the definition here? Hang on. The data center occupant less, at least 10,000 area, but not more than 99,999 of gross floor area, and/or consuming no more than 20 megawatts of power. That's a medium. What if you had, though, one coming in right at just a little over 10,000, but they're only using 1 megawatt of power? I mean, I think we need to kind of say, and it would be data center occupying at least 10,000 square feet of gross floor area, but not more than 999, and consuming no more than, I think we just need to define that a little more. I think it's kind of open-ended there. I think that would be a place where they could argue, well, I'm only using 1 megawatt of power, but I'd have a bigger floor space. An example would be the Kmart building. It's bigger than 10,000 feet, and if they're only using 1 megawatt, are we going to call that a medium, or are we going to call it a large? I mean, a small, something like that.
I'm going to ask a question on that. Is there a reason why we have to have square footage? Can we just have it based on power?
One of the suggestions that I'd seen was that you just limit it to the power usage. But
Yeah, we can definitely look into that. I don't know exactly why, or what would happen if we remove the square footage requirement. And I haven't quite had time to think about it. And I think Brennan modeled it like this because a lot of the other ones were kind of just trying to follow suit. One thing, because I kind of thought about the same way the city manager did, and you know, depending on what the will of the commission was, we could say something like, you know, so we have and or either, let's just say the medium is occupying no more than 99999 square feet and no more than 20 megawatts of power. We could say afterward that if a particular data center fits one but not both, we will default to the more restrictive measurement. That's sometimes what's done in our zoning ordinance for if there are, you know, two things that are kind of conflicting, then the default is to do whatever is more restrictive. So we could add that clause. Or we could explore removing it altogether, the square footage requirement altogether, if that's what the commission would like.
Thank you.
I asked the city manager a question. That's okay.
Is it about the same topic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Were you able to?
I have not looked at those links yet.
So yeah, just, I was able to acquire links of, Chandler, Arizona.
Oh, I have seen Chandler's ordinance.
Yeah, oh, okay. So that's the top one.
Oh, okay.
And so I was just looking to see if it had square footage.
I can't recall what all it had in
I don't see that it does, but anyway, I think we can acquire some other examples from specific.
it. Yeah, I think in
communities
that
that-
initial package I gave you all, I believe Chandler's ordinance
Is
was
that in there?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I don't recall whether that includes square footage or not.
I don't think it did.
It
Yeah,
doesn't,
okay.
I'm just glancing through it, it doesn't look like it does.
Well, and we took, the megawatt thing was a little confusing to me on that same section too, because, you know, 1 to 5, and then we have no more than 20, so we have like this zone where we haven't listed anything like, well, what happens between 6 to 10, so I don't know if that falls under medium. And my only other comment, not that I necessarily want to make this change, but the things I'm looking at, a lot of it says a large data center, they're talking about like 100 megawatts of energy, which isn't really feasible, but our definition is very small amount of power for a large data center. Maybe that's intentional, and that's fine, it's just a comment.
Yeah, I think the idea was what would be large for Raton.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
versus, you know, we're not talking Project Jupiter here.
Right.
So anything that would be that big would be in the county anyway.
Yeah.
We would
I
have
would-
no
there's no
jurisdiction.
room, yeah.
Yeah. So, yes,
It
you're,
makes
you're,
sense, and
yeah.
I'd rather have it tailored to Raton.
Yeah.
That was just a question.
I think that was the thought behind that.
Any other comments on that particular, or did you want to continue, Mr. Scott? Or-
I just was going to give one example of a statement that's pretty broad that could be, as Dan likes to say, arbitrary and capricious. If you look at 156.127D1, it says the Board of Adjustment shall make its decision on each proposal, special exception for a data center, and in the event of approval, shall impose minimum development requirements as required by this chapter with such additional requirements as the Board of Adjustment deems necessary to safeguard the public welfare, safety, health, convenience, and best interests of the adjoining property, the neighborhood, and the community. What the Board of Adjustment deems necessary, that's pretty broad and open to their opinion. We should probably have maybe some standards in there that need to be met. That, I would think, could definitely be construed as arbitrary. But there are some other comments like that around, mainly around this Board of Adjustment. It leaves it, they've got a lot of power, it seems, in this, without any real set definitive guidelines.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think the thought behind that was that this is kind of our first shot at the ordinance, and this is kind of a very new data centers in general. We're all municipalities are scrambling, and none of us really know what this looks like, and so this was an attempt to cover ourselves in case something should happen. But I totally understand. I mean, if the Board of Adjustment were to impose something that they could, that could be questioned as arbitrary and capricious, I mean, you're absolutely right. So we can take a look at that.
And along those lines, we don't list, we're saying you can only use X amount of water. What are we basing that on? They could come back and argue, well, Raton's not under water restrictions. Raton is, as to where Trinidad is stage 3 restrictions. You need some kind of measurement there.
Yeah. What some other municipalities have done, like what Santa Fe County did, was before they imposed their moratorium, they adopted a finding of fact that basically a commission can do that to basically state the facts by which they're planning on doing something. So I don't know specifically what that number was taken from, but if it is something that we want in the final draft, we could adopt a finding of fact that says, and I'm just, spitballing here, but, because of this organization's regulations on water and what standard practice is right now for these type of cooling units, we believe that this amount of water is what is necessary for this situation. This is basically, you're stating, this is why we're imposing these requirements. This is why we're being strict with this or whatever it is. And it makes it harder to challenge as being arbitrary because we have adopted the finding of fact to back it up.
Right.
So.
Madam Mayor, that's pretty much my review of it. I've opened the floor for you all to discuss. I think, if I recall, doesn't it also ban evaporative cooling?
Yes.
I don't know, can we ban evaporative cooling? That is the main cooling process in this country, in our area, I don't know. That was just another question that I had.
I don't think necessarily. I think that they tend to use a closed loop. Do you agree with me?
Right.
For data centers, yeah, that's kind of the standard now. And the ban on evaporative cooling would only apply to a data center in particular. It wouldn't apply to anything else.
And evaporative cooling is what takes up a lot of water.
Correct.
Correct.
Because you're using
The
the
closed loop
yeah.
is very small amount.
Right.
Well, but electronics and moisture don't mix.
Right.
Right.
That's why they don't use evaporative.
Yeah.
Well, and by limiting the amount of water, don't we essentially alleviate the evaporative cooling? issue by just saying you can't use that one.
I agree, yeah.
But I guess, kind of going back to what Max said, and by the way, I was up at 5 o'clock again this morning and had a little time, and I thought this was pretty well written for the most part, but kind of what I've leaned back to is it possible to determine this is how many gallons we would have available, or a percentage of the total usage of the community, or something like that? So we have control of that limit. We're trying to outgas something that we have no idea what may be presented to us, but we do know what our limits are in the way of power usage and water usage. So would it be outside the norm to just specify and say, this is what we have available, if you need more than that, we're not your guy?
I mean, that sounds, I don't know specifically, but that sounds reasonable. I mean, and that's definitely like a question for Water Board and Lloyd and for those exact numbers. But, I mean, that sounds reasonable. That sounds based in fact. That sounds something that would be difficult. You know, you can challenge anything in court, but would be difficult to challenge in court as they're being arbitrary because it's based off a real value, a real percentage of our water supply.
Well, kind of going back to Dan's attitude, and I'm that way. It's like, I don't want to single somebody out, but we do know within our organization what our limits are as to this is what we got. If you can't work with that, then.
Right. Well, I think that's covered here because they have to have an agreement with the water board, so that would come up during those negotiations.
Yeah, so I would think it would be similar, I don't know, Commissioner Campbell, if you want to correct me, but for RPS, you have to have a will serve or will serve letter or something like that. So the company has to contact RPS, say how much they're gonna do, they have to do a load study, and then with that, then RPS decides if they can actually serve that. If they can, then they reply to that answer for any business. And I don't know if that's true for the water department as well, if they do some kind of will serve thing. Are you aware of anything, Commissioner Campbell, or?
Yeah, they actually turn around and you actually come in and most of the time, whether it be a hotel or different things we've gone through motel, you're gonna actually have a projected use and everything they go through, because that's the first question. I was talking earlier, it's like when we almost were gonna, the south end of town was gonna build a biomass power plant back at a time. That was one of the biggest issues that was addressed by the water board is, you know, was theirs where you do use evaporative cooling, because they were gonna have a turbine or whatever else. What's that number going to be? That project didn't happen, but that was one of the biggest questions. And then the other question was, because of the location, could it use reclaimed water as cooling water? Those were all the lengthy discussion during that one. I actually think is addressing it in here. My personal opinion is from the power issue and the water issue would be, rather than getting too specific in here, would be sending them to your two franchises, because they actually involve quite a bit more of a power study and everything else. And you don't want to get into anything that hints this is enough, and they're worse. You know, what they're going to do, you know, the study they're going to, and not try to delegate too much of that away from it. Just like the water. I know what you're saying on a fixed number. That number won't be the same in 5 years. It's going to constantly be changing toward that board will look at it at that point as to what's available. Let's be honest, anything could happen, and we don't have that availability, you know, sometime in the future, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you know. So it's kind of a moving target to where the utility at that point, because part of that is not only availability of water, it's going to be that, it's going to be what happens to town as far as even housing, availability at your treatment plant, with not requiring a large project to be able to treat more for some type of use, because that's the difference we have with surface water treatment. You've always got a capacity that's the maximum we can put out of that facility. And say Raton population's going up, that number's shrinking all along the way. And from an industrial or any type of use like this, a casino, any facility, we're gonna have to look at that number, And from their side, that's where the discussion would be reuse, everything else. As far as monitoring, like their use, it brings that up in here. The only thing I would question, and I haven't, Jade and I haven't talked to you or Mac about, is putting anything in here that we don't have in there about other types of uses under LI and HI, to where it does look like we're going toward a ban. You know, like I said, I know we're going real specific in here, but you know, if you look under HI, sure, we don't have this, but it actually has petroleum type stuff, pulp, paper uses. If we go into too much design stuff, the two utilities are going to say yes or no. That's the biggest issue right now. And this right now is we've sitting on RPS. You're not building. I don't think you're building a medium. You know, what we actually, the numbers we're looking at, what's available, it's not going to happen. You know, if the power wouldn't be here. Then if you start talking about you're going to try to do your own power, that's a whole other decision, because I'm not sure we have a piece of land inside the city limits that would be doing that. And then where's your water going to come from? It's the same thing that's going on anywhere that would happen. So I guess all of those issues kind of drive what's happening. I'd say that one of the biggest limitations we're looking at right now would be power. And that's going to, you know, that's been that way for a long time. But still, I guess those two would handle that. But make sure, I actually like, well, the way this is written, the only thing I'm saying is, if we went down this road, some of it, should we not be looking at LI and HI and all kinds of uses? We have a lumber, sure, they're outside the city limits, but like even, you know, some of the woodwork that goes out on 555, some of these types of facilities that's there is being careful. And that's why I'm saying what we coming through some other cases, arbitrary and capricious, where you're singling out an industry and saying, this is what we're going to do. There's a lot of ways we can do it, but be careful it's not just set toward only that, because that's where we end up. Somebody bought a piece of property, we stopped it, just check on good, that's a taking. How much money did I lose? That's what came up, actually, that bit about being really careful about how you wrote cannabis. You stopped me and I was gonna make this much money, and you end up in a courtroom. I'm not saying we'll lose, but we've been there before, and you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight it. We've done that over water, trash, several issues over the last 2 or 3 decades. You don't wanna go down that road. There's ways we can do it and make sure, because the water, you come with this huge water number, the answer's no. Power, it's already, you know, been looked at, it's not gonna happen. The one other thing I have that I'd question is, knowing that we have a lumens type project possibly out there, which is, you know, I don't believe it's a data center, but it's called fiber optic regeneration. Where does that fall in all these definitions? And the only reason I ask that is, everybody's definition, and I'm saying this one's really good, but if you read Santa Fe County, every one of them's different, and then you start reading it, it may fall in there. Well, they're already looking at a site, and at one point we've done zoning on some stuff. If it stops, and they get caught up in this, even if it wasn't our intention, that is a taking. You stop their project. And I don't think that's a data center. I think, heck, that's not similar to what Baca Valley does at Station 3 when it goes from fiber optic to, you know, to where they go to their antenna and stuff. They got quite a bit of equipment in there, but they're just switching that signal. And I guess that was my concern.
Yeah, and we thought about that long and hard kind of when we were kicking around different things and iterating on the different drafts. And one thing that was brought up is, okay, so we have this Lumen project. We don't want to disrupt it, but at the same time, the problem with the Lumen regeneration station has HVAC units. It has besides the large power drain and the water usage, but even then, there's a possibility for some. We have all the same concerns. It checks many of the same boxes for concern as a data center does. The noise, you know, et cetera. So, but we did make an effort to kind of differentiate. I think in Commissioner Hoger had spelled out a fiber optic node, and so we used that and kind of plugged it in to say, okay, so if you're and we made it very specific. So if you're using less than 1 megawatt of power and you fit this fiber optic node definition, then you are not subject to these requirements. But again, depending on what the will of the commission is, we could change that. The number could go up, the number could go down. You know, we just kind of, we left it, we differentiated the two, but, you know, it just depends on what you would like to see with these projects. So,
And I don't that from what I've heard, they're looking at 1.8 megawatts is their possible, project they're talking about.
I was
You do
thinking,
know
yeah.
lumens will take us to court.
Oh, absolutely.
It's essentially it's taking the water department to court over lights. They
Well-
won't hesitate.
If we're putting it in perspective, we got 12 Tesla chargers that use up to a megawatt. Like,
Yeah.
I think 1 megawatt is a little low for both
Maybe-
definitions.
Yeah, let's do a little research, but maybe we could raise that to 2.
Absolutely.
To 2.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Let's read and make
Because
sure
even
we're doing
data
the right
center
thing.
small, I don't think you have, 1 megawatt to 5 megawatts. I think you could change that a little bit and increase that 2 to 5 or something, and the node less than 2 or something. That would be one way to get around that kind of thing, because I feel like there's gonna be a lot of projects in the future that have nothing to do with this that are gonna be using more energy. Whether we have it to give or not is another thing, but it's just the way of the future. Everything is using more energy.
And I believe you're right, I think the driving influence on that is gonna be energy. I mean, look at the car charging station, it was never even thought we'd see those kind of numbers.
And every
We're
new
gonna have to look at
construction,
all of that, because that peak can be a problem when it's in the middle of a wintertime night. And that's what I'm saying, that's what they're talking about is, so we're gonna have to be cautious. And I'm not saying data center, everything like you talked about, yeah, we did this one, but even then, I'm going the opposite way. How many of them are you gonna do before you get into trouble? So you still have to be able to say no.
Yeah.
We don't have it, like I said, power-wise. Because, like one today maybe, but, like Mayor, you and I've had that discussion over there, is if you add a casino in there, you take possible things, then, and let's be honest, as a progressive community, you're looking at, from RPS's side, then you also have to look at steps to have more available power. But our power comes over a line that's not here in town, that, there's gonna be a limit to where we have to turn around to where I'm saying the Lumens project, but I'm also saying we have to be able to look carefully at each step, that we don't approach our max, that we don't get into trouble
And I think
that
that's-
cold wintertime night that we're using a lot of electricity.
Yeah, the point will come where we will have to say no more.
Yeah, you can't.
And they can't sue us
No.
at that point.
Well, and that's up to RPS.
If you don't have it, you don't have it.
That's up to RPS. That's why it's important that the franchises stay a separate step.
And the same thing on water, because that's
Yep.
the biggest issue on water is peak usage, same thing.
So the RPS, RWW, they have their own process to approve usage of water or power, irregardless of how much they want.
and one thing that, to speak to Commissioner Campbell's, what he was saying about the water and the power being the limiting factors, that is in the approval process. So both the water, they have to come to the Board of Adjustment with written statements that they availability to serve or a will serve letter. So that they'd have to go to RPS, they'd have to go to Raton Waterworks, and they would have to agree to serve them for their complete, usage.
So I guess if the franchises determine that, then do we need the language regarding how they use their water? Because, we didn't tell Maverick, okay, only so many toilet flushes, and then you gotta close your
Well,
bathroom.
that's going to come up in my comments. It's not so much the water, it's the wastewater. And then that's what I was gonna bring up, but I'm sure you can.
But it would come out in their service agreement from the franchise to this, whatever this organization might be in the future. The only other question I had, though, was the sound limits. Do we have a baseline? Like the HVAC units is super safe. When they kick on, what's the decibel? Yeah.
From outside, it would depend on where you're measuring it from, of course, but from their property limit, my guess would be around this, but I'm not sure, because basically what we did was, so 70 decibels, I believe, on DBA is about what a vacuum cleaner is, a household vacuum cleaner, when you're running it right next to you. So it's decently loud.
Yeah. So we're not being excessive here.
No.
When it
Especially
comes to decibels, length of time you're exposed to that level of decibel matters. So something like that noise, I mean, we kind of live with it, but then when it goes off, it's like,
Well, it's like your refrigerator at home.
Right.
When it turns off, it's quiet.
so, so we have to, decibels is more complicated than just level. We need to consider the whole package of it. How long is it going to be at this decibel level versus not.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, if you want to continue to comment, you have the floor, and if not, we'll open it up for others.
No. That was my question on that. We'll all wait until we go down through the agreement further.
Somebody else want to start on a few comments?
I have one, speaking of noise, and it's a question. The last draft that we had specified a distance from residential area of a half a mile or 1,320 feet, and I was just wondering why you reduced it to a quarter mile.
the idea was, again, because we're trying to walk that fine line between being protecting and also being heavy-handed. And I think we believe that as long as we put in the right noise requirements at the edge of the boundary, then we can shorten that distance to where, because we're worried about this. We're worried about the sound, both the high, the audible tones and also the low tones.
Right.
And so if we account for both of those things, then we can make the case that we're not, I guess you could say, pushing them out by requiring these big distances between those, residential, hospital, those sorts of sensitive areas.
Right, and that is my concern,
Yeah.
although as I started doing a little more research, I see that a quarter mile is standard for a small or perhaps medium data center.
Yeah.
When I first saw that, I went, no, wait, it has to be a half a mile. But I do see that the standard seems to be a quarter mile. I am still concerned about that low-level hum, so
Yeah.
we have to be sure that that's accounted for in
Yeah.
our sound.
Yeah, so the idea was, I think I have the DBZ weighted, and how DBZ works is it's an unweighted. So DBA is weighted for our what the human ear can hear, so only measuring the frequencies that we can hear, whereas DBZ is unweighted, so it accounts for, everything equally. And so they're between 0 and 40 hertz, we really can't hear, or low tones below like 40 decibels we can't really hear. And so it was calculated so that there would be not only can we not hear it, but we will not be, if they're at the property line, they won't be able to feel it, because that's usually the problem, is you can feel it, that people can feel it in their body, and it won't resonate with the windows or the buildings that are next to it. So it's at a frequency, or it's at a decibel level that is low enough to where it won't cause any effects on those surrounding areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why those numbers were kind of chosen that way, so that by the time it gets to it's measured at the property line, so anything after that will not affect whatever is on the other side, whether it be a residential neighborhood or whether it be a commercial building, what have you.
Okay. My next concern is about wastewater, Because it now states that they will have to tell us how wastewater will be purified, if there is any wastewater. But I think we should probably use a little stronger language regarding where they might dispense wastewater to make sure that it doesn't go into soil or any of our existing waterways, or that there's any contamination, whether it be bacterial or chemical, and that might even prevent us from then reusing that water like we do now for the golf course and so forth. And looking a little further, there's a preventive maintenance, you probably read about this, procedure that they do call fill and flush.
I'm not familiar.
Sometimes they have to clean out those closed loops, and when they do that, sometimes they just use a shortcut and just start putting municipal water into those closed loops. And it's a shortcut, and it's very frowned upon by the industry, because what they're doing there is they're not accounting for microparticles. So I think we should say they have to comply with industry standards for their fill and flush procedures. And don't dispense any water without treatment or some disclosure about whether chemicals or microorganisms are present. But not just say, it's kind of loose when we're just saying how wastewater will be purified, if there is any, because I think there will be. At some point, they have to clean out those loops.
And we can look at, sorry, go ahead, I apologize. And we can look at whether it would be sufficient to say something like, they will dispose of wastewater in accordance with EPA guidelines.
It is an EPA, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe they have to prove to us that here's their plan to dispose of the wastewater by EPA guidelines. So, like you said, it doesn't end up in the groundwater, it doesn't end up.
Right, and the guidelines are there, so
Yeah.
they just have to say that they're following
Yes.
EPA guidelines, so.
I was thinking along, if I may, Commissioner, I was thinking along those lines, I think you bring up some good points, but how much of this needs to be in our ordinance and how much of it would Waterworks, as part of their service, already address? I'm just curious, and that would be a question, maybe we can have them review this, because I think having something in there about EPA guidelines is super important, but maybe when they do these service letters, maybe they already discuss water and wastewater, because
Right,
they have to
because-
treat it, it goes through their plant, there's a whole.
That's a hole in my knowledge. I don't know every detail about the water department
Yeah.
like some people do.
So,
So
just out of
yes,
curiosity.
if they would already do that, and it's known that they would already do that, we don't have to put it in. Yeah.
I guess to address that, Mayor, if I may, is that it's exactly like water. The first question I have is, they actually will go further. What is the chemical constituent of your wastewater? And then it will be determined, and it's actually in our discharge permit, whether they're required to have pretreatment before it can ever leave there, which is not uncommon. Like I said, believe it or not, we went through the same thing for a microbrewery, because the BOD strength, you had to say, wait a minute, is this going to hit the plant too hard? All of those things are actually in the same training they go through, and that's actually from that side is what is the strength of your wastewater, and that can be even organics, because it's you're feeding the bugs and you can't go too fast, you kill them. So you do those. It's actually why we continually monitor. One of the worst things in town that happens is when somebody, usually won't name names, but dumps oil or whatever, and it goes down and ends up down there, and you'll see it in your headworks. And you start backtracking with the camera like, okay, who did this or whatever. All of those types of things are in there in your permit when you actually go and address them, especially on an industrial facility. If you're a motel and you have a swimming pool, question comes up fast. Are you discharging it? At what rate? And everything else, to where all of those will come in, because you're, exactly like you said, your wastewater system, if you have a connection to the sewer, if you don't, you have to have a discharge permit. So I would actually say EPA, and address in there if you need to comply with NMED requirements. They're more stringent than EPA actually, is actually that. But if you tie to the city, then they're gonna ask all those questions as to whether you have to have pre-treatment. And if you have a pre-treatment facility, we're gonna end up going and taking samples of what you're sending us.
So are you saying that some businesses would be required to pre-treat before they discharge
Yes.
water?
We don't have any now, because we have to answer that every time, because we don't have that kind of industry. That was another one that was possibly gonna be biomass, or some of those that was the biggest industrial type thing. There was a process where they treated some of their water when the power plant used to make power. We had that, that same type of issue. They had a cooling tower, they were gonna send us any discharge, everything else, to where right now, when you go through that, those questions come up on your permit, your EPA permit that comes out every 5 years, and that's actually it. Do you have any pretreatment, your sampling cycle and everything else? If you had a facility like this, especially if it's a medium or a large or any of those, if they're gonna have a discharge, that's gonna be the first
Okay,
question.
so
What's in it?
And so we wouldn't be singling them out because
No.
any.
It goes
okay.
through the same process.
So they'd have to, when they go to the water department, they'll be asked that question. Water quantity and quality of the wastewater. And the other big question is exactly the same thing on wastewater, the peak. You can't blow that down and send it to a plant that's only gonna take 750,000 gallons a day and do it quickly. That's the same thing we do on a swimming pool. You can't empty it out fast. Our own pool, we have that issue we look at. It's gotta come out at a controlled rate if you're gonna discharge anything. Even though it's pool water and it's not bad, you can't overtake the plant.
Yeah.
All of those questions will have to come up as to what they can or can't do.
Okay.
So maybe I would recommend on those two sections, the power section and the water section, that RPS or their boards or both, RWW, their boards both review those sections to see what we actually need in our ordinance versus what they already have in procedure, and how to best protect ourselves if we want to mention specifically EPA, NMED, that kind of thing.
And I think a big part is gonna be like Mayor Pro Tem had said, is, exactly like it already addresses, you have to have a service agreement with both.
Right.
Before you even turn around and move forward with the project, where you went there and did that first. That comes up on subdivisions, everything. You have to know we have the quantity.
Yeah, I think it'd be great for them to wordsmith that and call it what needs to be called so it matches the process. Commissioner Hoover, you saw it before.
Yeah, one other item has to do with the generator use. So this is item E, I believe. So right now it says generator use and testing would only be between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. They're just called generators. I don't know if there's any reason to call it emergency testing or backup generators. I don't know. That's just something that occurred to me. But once again, I think this is something where we need to make sure that they comply with EPA standards and industry standards. And it looks to me like, there's different reasons they'll use generators. And if they're just doing their regular maintenance, the time is something like 30 minutes a month at 30% load. So that's really only 6 to 15 hours per year for their just regular preventive maintenance and testing. The other time, of course, when they might use it is if they have a loss of power. And that would be easy to document that there was a loss of power in that situation. But we need to make it clear that the generators, the backup or emergency generators, are only to be used when they're doing preventive maintenance and if they have loss of power, not to supply additional power.
Yeah. I think, I'm trying to find where it is.
Page 4.
I believe we do specify that the only reason they can run their generators is an emergency situation or make regular maintenance.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, I just wasn't sure where that was because, well, it says except in emergency situations.
Which,
We might want to define that an emergency situation is when there is a loss of power because and it would have to be documented.
right.
somehow.
Because anything that, ironically, we did this and we just tried to look at it as many different ways and find all the loopholes But things like that are something that could possibly be used as well as an emergency to our business. It was a business emergency.
Right.
So we, we needed more power for XYZ. So maybe
And they could
getting
keep
a
saying
little,
that.
yeah. So maybe
Yeah.
getting in the definitions a little more specific on what constitutes an emergency situation
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
might be a good idea.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I would say, just to add, we should completely agree with Commissioner Hoger, is probably would address emergency backup generation only to be used in power failures only or something, to where something catastrophic had to happen. And not that you put a generator on to run your facility or something. I think that's almost, something we look at through town, but it's definitely something we need to clear up to where somebody, they don't consider it their own rate. Maybe it's only as a power failure only or something like that, and be real specific.
Yeah. We don't have that many.
Mayor Pro, or who, so Commissioner Schuster, Commissioner Campbell, anyone else want to go through your notes next? Commissioner Schuster?
Unfortunately, I did not bring my notes, but I did have a discussion with the Weld County Environmental Department Director yesterday, and he did advise that we don't actually call it an ordinance regarding data centers because they do come with different terms such as fiber optic regeneration, and so he was telling me that Weld County and the city of Greeley are looking at different ways of just phrasing that would be more inclusive, so that it doesn't single one particular one out versus another, and yet. So I think I'll be bringing some of that back to us if you're interested. I can, as they come up with things, I can bring those suggestions back to.
I'm looking to see what Socorro and Santa Fe, Santa Fe called it large-scale data center facilities.
Yeah, they're very targeted to really high-use
Yeah.
big facilities, not
Yeah.
anything smaller.
He was saying one of the terms they're playing with is newer industrial regeneration, or, it's just, so they're looking at different terms just so that it's more inclusive.
Socorro just says data centers and direct supporting infrastructure.
Anything further?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Campbell, did you have anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I was surprised by Santa Fe's that it had 100 megawatts, but they lowered it to one. And it's called large data center. I'm like, that sounds like something they bended at the meeting or whatever,
Yeah.
because it just
Because they
changes.
call it large, but large is
Larger,
one.
and they go down to
which-
one, because it had 100, and they crossed that out, put
Uh-huh.
one. I was like, that happened rather quickly. To where, I'm just saying, I think that's the part to address, what Commissioner Schuster said, is the definition's the part to struggle with, because every one of them's different.
Well, and I think the
I
moratorium.
actually like what you wrote here. It's really inclusive to where we
Yeah,
up with
yeah,
it.
nice job, you guys.
We came up with it and then ironically used multiple AI search engines to try to poke holes in it. and then iterated again and again until we kind of came up with something that would, I don't want to say bulletproof because nothing is, but we tried to break it as many times, and we're happy with this. But like Commissioner Schuster said, we're always up, because that's the thing. This terminology is new, very so new. So anything you think of, we're happy to incorporate it in.
I think too, the moratoriums are very different than a standing ordinance, so
Exactly.
that's gonna,
Right.
they're gonna do a lot of work before they actually put together an ordinance, I think. Yeah.
Right, and that's why they have the moratorium, so they can address all those.
Time to do the work.
Yeah.
Is there a municipal ordinance in the state
No.
yet? No, just.
And these are both county moratoriums, they're not city.
Yeah.
So that's,
And if you read Socorro's, it pretty much says they don't do anything.
Yeah.
They don't have zoning, they don't have anything else. I'm like, well, what did you stop? It's like, you don't even have to have a building permit. I'm like, wait a minute.
And counties are a little different animal.
Yes,
than
they are.
cities,
I mean,
so-
it's like, it raises a question where versus municipality, you're gonna have a tough time doing it, because on a lot of situations, you don't even have to go to the county.
Right,
Right.
county's not involved.
No.
Right.
Mayor Pro Tem, I know you had some more comments.
Well, and I just thought of this when we were going back and forth, but Mac, when you get an application does the gas company ever come into play here? Did they issue a service letter?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, the gas company comes in planning and on the planning and zoning side, basically for the 811 call, you know? That's as much as we interface with the gas company, just to make sure that they have done an 811 call. But am I, oh, Jane's not there, okay. I believe that we don't really.
Well, and I guess, and I'm wondering if it's needed, because I just remember when that Warzilla was delivered, that was one of the concerns, was if we had to run that thing in the dead of winter, the gas line coming across the mesa wasn't big enough to handle it and the town.
It raises a question.
Yeah, and I forgot, that was one other thing I wanted to bring up, if we needed to distinguish what they were using to run their generators. Would be natural.
Well, because natural gas is kind of the fuel of choice for
Yeah.
standby generators. It's just, it's kind of like the Burl Canyon line. It's very constricted.
And it matters a lot on, depending on the size of your facility, even an emergency generator is gonna determine the size of their emergency generator. And that could use a lot of natural gas, you're right.
Oh, yeah, I guess we're gonna have to write that in. Thank you for reminding me of that.
But I've never, every time I've ever had my path crossed with Penny Periodal, I never thought to ask it if
How they
they
work with
issue,
their service.
if there's a service letter that they issue or not.
It's a good question. I made a note, you know, do we explore whether or not we need to add RNG to the list?
Yeah. The other one I'd kind of bring up though, and do we apply it to anybody else, the decommissioning section?
No.
We don't.
Because I kind of took an exception to it only, and that's in my notes, is I was trying to think, well, who else have we required
And
to?
Mayor and Commission, that is one of the questions that popped up in my investigations too, was about the decommissioning. How can you set the 125% if there's nothing there to base it off? That could be very arguable.
Right.
I did think, I liked that it's in there, because I think it's something we need to address that the state probably isn't addressing. Like, I think about mining, there's always I don't know if you call it decommissioning, but reclamation and all that. There's really strict standards to do that. And this potentially has especially if there was something large, it would have a big effect. But I don't know how much we can put it into play, or if it'd be arguable, but I like that it's there. I mean,
And maybe
Oh,
it should be in other
I
things.
agree. I like it's there, but it popped up as
Opens up
something
something.
arguable, yes.
Well, and the only thing I noticed in there is it's not, okay, I can see him removing the equipment, but would we ask him to actually tear the structure down?
I guess, Mayor, my only comment on that would be really careful where we go with it, because we haven't done anywhere else, and I don't know, maybe alternate uses, but you sure didn't decommission Kmart, you didn't decommission City Market, you didn't
Aaron's
commission
building,
Morgan
it
Buildings.
goes
It took
on and on.
10 years to get rid of that facility.
We didn't decommission the RPS plant.
No,
Yeah.
it's historical, but yeah. And, you know, like, I'm just saying, at the same time, it didn't decommission the old hospital. It's probably gonna have to get knocked down. I mean, I don't know, I mean, it's,
Like I said, is one point that came up as being arguable.
I guess that would be the one, is if you're singling an industry out, we'd have to think about it. I actually see the part about emptying equipment and making it a safe zone and everything else. I think you do that with anybody.
Sure.
But I don't know, does that mean remove the building? I'm not, I guess it depends on what kind
Well,
of
maybe
building
not
we're
the
at.
building, but leave it
You sure wanna
clean
empty it
and
out.
not contaminated.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I really, we've answered a lot of my other comments. I know you still have one, but if we're on decommissioning, if we think about the community benefits agreement, maybe there's something in that where we could add a decommissioning plan or something like that. Because that, to me, is something that's gonna be specific. We're gonna ask for that. Otherwise, there's no benefit to the community really of the project beyond construction. And some utilities, some electric utilities. So to me, that is becoming standard in the industry, so I don't think it's singling them out. So if we put that as part of a community benefit agreement, a decommissioning plan or something like that, I don't know if, instead of having it as own thing that targets, have it in that perhaps. I don't know if that's allowable or not, and I have another comment on that, but I'll let Mayor Pro Tem finish.
Well, I just, for example, like the mining thing, it's called bond release is the process they go through on that. But the way that functioned, for every ton of coal that was sent out, the mine was required to set back in trust a percentage. But that's a pretty heavy lift, asking any kind of an industry to bond a demolition out in the untold future. You know, I know, like myself, but acquiring payment and performance bonds, these insurance companies are not quite so nice to deal with anymore on this. It's getting harder, and especially where it's an undetermined future date that has to occur. So I guess whenever I read it, what came to mind was we're asking for something that I don't know if it's achievable.
So, I guess what I'm hearing is a little heavy-handed on the decommissioning plan side.
I think so, and especially if we haven't ever applied it to another industry. I mean, Maverick, we didn't tell them, well, when this thing shuts down, you tear it down.
You're right. I mean, we're a town full of undecommissioned things that are, I mean, the reason we're in this situation is because the decommissioning plans didn't exist. But just to, an idea occurred to me. So we could maybe in the zoning ordinance restrict it to maybe just removing the hazardous equipment and then doing some sort of EPA testing of the soil, making sure, removing all the guts, leaving the building, and then as part of a community benefits agreement, maybe we could say, okay, after you're done with it, you level it and turn it into a park. I don't know. But we could set those things up to where zoning, we're only requiring them making it safe, but then maybe the rest could be in a community benefits agreement, no matter what, what shape that takes.
Yeah, I like the idea of addressing the hazardous issues
Right,
and like
definitely.
EPA, NMED, whatever it is.
Is there any other examples of decommissioning other places that we know of? And the only reason I'm saying that is you don't want it, like you said, I know that's number, if you start going down that road, are we gonna be where certain businesses, it isn't something like they're gonna come? I mean,
Right. Well, I can just see us having to be forced into like the public school. Yeah, if you spend $90 million, now we want a bond, so you tear that down and it gets remodeled again.
because otherwise we end up with the old schools like we do now.
We have so many things.
Yeah.
So many.
I think there are examples in other states. I don't know about Mexico.
The reason why I brought it up was because, so at our most recent NMLZO conference, Chavez County is getting ready not to pass a data center ordinance, but a BESS or battery energy storage system ordinance, because someone's looking to come in and they're trying to get it set, and they are even more stringent than this with their ordinance. So, and I talked to their planning and zoning director and said, hey, do you feel like maybe we should do something similar? And he said, yeah, I do recommend doing something similar. Now, what that means for us, like Commissioner Honeyfield said, maybe this version is a little too big of an ask, but maybe we could get it to somewhere that just protects the community from it being left with hazardous material in it.
Well, and I can see where certain situations you would want that protection. I caught a blurb the other day, Sunzia, they're located in San Miguel, Torrance, and Lincoln counties. They're the largest wind farm in the United States. Not a megawatt, stays in New Mexico. But I can see that being trouble for them when those wind turbines live out their life. That, how do you decommission that? Because that has been a point of contention in all, and I would hope the folks of Las Vegas thought that out, but.
I guess just thinking out loud is just maybe it, rather than, because you don't want to really single out an industry, but, and we know we have enough problems with it otherwise, but you don't want to come across as a bond that's long-term future, because most businesses don't plan on ending really, the day's gonna happen to everybody, but like I said, or every industry, but they don't do that. Is, maybe it's like just what you brought up, Mayor Pro Tem, is maybe it's more of a specific type thing where when that day comes or with that industry, we're sitting down saying, like you're talking about, specific project they had, is we would look at that saying, okay, but part of what we're gonna require is, based on this timeline, this is gonna happen, whether it be energy or whatever in the future, like you said, but don't do something that's not real common in New Mexico in small communities that would make somebody think about, well, then I'm just going somewhere else.
Yeah.
Rather than spend that kind of money. Where if they want to be here and that's that facility, then I'd say, like you talked, we're sitting down having that discussion. Come the end of this cycle, this guy has got to go. And
Well, because my thing is, and I know 20 years ago, they were advocating for it, how technology's changing exponentially. We're living it now.
Mm-hmm.
So the lifespan of this thing, who knows? It could be 5 years and then,
I think that's likely.
yeah. I'll have one other thing,
Okay.
but anybody else?
You go first, and then I'll end this out.
The other question I had, it was on the second to last page, on number 3. It starts off within 90 days of occupancy, a post-construction noise study completed by a licensed professional engineer specializing in acoustics, or an engineer board certified by the Institute of Noise Control Engineers must be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Department. The only thing when I read that, I thought, we didn't really spell out, okay, if they don't meet their benchmarks, what happens?
Good question.
Kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe there's a solution to that of a time frame as to when they need to take whatever corrective measures.
But isn't it tied to their license?
I don't think this particular thing, I'd have to read it again specifically with what Commissioner Honeyfield has in mind. And if there isn't something, if it doesn't explicitly say, this is our power, this is what, we can do about it, then, yeah, if they don't comply with things like that, we need to have something that we can shut the door. Yeah, we can shut the door if they don't comply. Because we can find them all day long. If it's a big company, they'll just gladly pay it.
No, we'll have to revoke their license.
Yeah. Or shut off power, or whatever it is that we need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we have a sewage leak, that's what Lloyd does, and he shuts off the water. So there's precedent for it.
But yeah, we could just
Yeah.
maybe put a timeline in there as to, okay, compliance needs to be achieved by so many days out or months or whatever. That's all I had.
I do have one other thing that we haven't really gotten into is the community benefit agreement. A couple concerns. One concern is that if we're talking about, I feel like profit sharing needs to be in there, city profit sharing as a tool, because there are, from my research, there's not a lot of benefit to the actual city on that, and so I think the words city profit sharing need to be in there. The other thing is I would have a hard time allowing planning and zoning to approve that agreement. I think that is something that would need to come to the commission that discusses job opportunities, tax revenue, and et cetera, whatever it is. But I feel like that would be something the city would need to, just like RPS approves one thing, Waterworks approves another, I feel like the city needs to approve a benefit agreement.
And the benefit agreement is another arguable.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's,
But
it is I would say it's becoming
allowable.
standard, yeah.
They are allowable, but you've got to be very specific in what you're doing and not overtaxing.
Yeah. Well, and everything that I've seen is it's a very small profit share. I mean, it's like 1% or something like that. It's very small. But, and everything, and also the stuff I've researched and the stuff I sat in on, talks about that being if you have that, don't worry about the rest of the stuff. I mean, obviously we want to know the job opportunities,
Right.
but there is like an average of like 1 job per 5 megawatts or something like that. I can't remember what the formula is. Like the tax revenue, I don't know if there is tax revenue really, because what are they, if it's destination-based sales in New Mexico, there's no source-based tax revenue. So that kind of thing. Workforce training programs, I don't know that that's as important to me because we have other training programs going on. Health and well-being, those things are great, but like they've mentioned in those trainings, the number one thing that's the best for the long term is if the city can get a profit share, then whoever is on the commission helps decide that, and you don't commit yourself to like this park that then the next commission doesn't want, or pet project of mine that then I don't get elected, and now Dan has a different idea, you know, like, sorry, Commissioner Campbell has a different idea, and you kind of roll it down. So I think the cleanest way is just a really simple profit sharing thing, and that then what do we need? Can it be used for roads or?
Madam Mayor, can I play devil's advocate?
Sure.
I'm the big AI guy coming to town and I say, but I'm buying your utilities. That should be enough. And they pay sales tax on those utilities.
I think you have that discussion, I mean, but
Yeah.
that doesn't do anything for the city. I mean, especially in
water
other
department
places.
would be
We
happy.
just happen, no, it does. It does great things for for RPS, actually, especially water department, yeah, but not, I mean, the models they're looking at aren't these big water using things. So
Yes.
RPS makes money, which can help potentially with their power generation, future projects or whatever. But we're unique in the fact that we have that under our city umbrella, but we don't get direct funding. Whereas other places, your utility company is making money, but it doesn't touch the city. So, and we're set up very similar. We're very separate. We don't get money from RPS unless the buckets are all overflowing and they somehow transfer it to us, which I don't think happens very often.
We could
Mayor,
discuss
can I play,
franchising.
Mayor, can I play devil's advocate to Mayor Pro Tem? It's like, I know what you're saying, but it is power, and most cities don't own the power.
Right.
So, RPS is the same situation. They have a lot of their own issues to face. But I'm just saying, if you go anywhere else and it's tri-state or wherever,
Yep.
that town gets nothing.
It doesn't
outside of
touch
water.
the city.
And now water is a serious concern, but it's getting better industry-wise. You need to watch the wastewater. But I'm just saying, I actually think if it's possible on several different type of businesses, that's not a bad idea to think about. Is something like that doable? I mean, something similar we even discussed on the casino type places, on room occupancy, if they build some in the future that's gone on other places. I think all of that should be on the table. I don't know how much is in here, but even as a commission, I think you think of that as the city's, gets a benefit out of something. Or the taxpayers, the
Right.
ratepayers, the
There has to be a
citizens.
benefit to the
And-
city.
And the mayor made the point, to them, it's maybe 1 or 2%, it's nothing.
Yeah, it's still.
Well, in all the trainings I've sat in on, if this ever were to happen here, and a lot of the trainings are for these mega huge projects, but they're like, whatever you think they make, you need to like triple, quadruple.
Yeah.
It's way more money than you think. And so I don't think it's unfair if that were to happen here to require some kind of profit sharing.
So, relook at the community benefit agreement, perhaps add profit sharing, and then planning and zoning can't be the final decision maker. Maybe they're the first step, but then after they approve it, just like it has to go to.
It would
yeah.
have to come to
Yeah,
us, because
yeah.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, sounds
It
good.
wouldn't be good for them to be making that kind of decision.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be appropriate. Or it could be an out, honestly, I think it's, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it's almost like RPS and water, they go through those processes first and outside P and Z, and then all that stuff comes to P and Z. So maybe this comes outside to the city, and then all those things are bundled together that go, and then the whole thing goes through P and Z.
So it has to be approved by the commission
Some kind
first.
of benefit agreement first, and then the whole
And that
package,
goes
once
to
they have their
P&Z.
letter from both, and then they have
Okay.
whatever from us.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know if that's
Yeah.
appropriate or
Yeah.
not, but.
Yeah.
So in other words, we prove them worthy of applying.
Maybe we'll never have to use this, so we'll be. But that was my only other comment. Anything further from the commission? Mr. Sagata?
No, you know, again, just want to thank Matt for the work he's put in this.
Definitely.
Commissioner Holder, everybody that's
Yes.
contributed. I mean,
Thank you.
this is an ongoing thing. We are getting closer to a finished product.
Yeah, right.
Have you thought about a review of where we would go from the legal side, looking at it, since we kind of are first?
I do believe we ought to have our attorneys look at it. It's probably, I would think, prior to us even introducing
Yep.
it, definitely. And I'm leaning towards maybe our utility attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Can the municipal league render an opinion?
I think they can look at it, but I think
They'll
you're.
look at it, but they're not gonna give you yay or nay.
No, they can send an advisement.
No, we can.
May not be a bad idea to do both, but I'm just saying, I think from an attorney's, it's back to my arbitrary and capricious, just make sure if it goes too far, we don't do it.
Yes.
I feel like when we come to the point where we feel like we have a pretty good draft, then it goes to legal review.
Yep, absolutely.
And then after legal review, then we maybe consider it again and then introduce it, because it is a process.
It is.
It takes some time. So.
I think we want to get this right.
Yeah.
We want to get it right. And if we are going to be the first community in the state with this, we definitely want to get it right.
Everybody will be looking at
Yeah.
doing this first.
Yeah.
So.
Because the drastic difference between us and counties does include utilities and all
Yes.
kinds of issues. The counties are doing, it's a fairly easy road. You really don't control, a lot of them don't even have zoning.
No.
No.
I mean, you know, it's, so I mean, it's like from the community that it gets into zoning, utilities, every issue you can imagine.
There's nothing further. Oh, thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gary. We did discuss Commissioner Schuster, and we were trying to figure out that second meeting in August. We have the Municipal League Conference.
Right.
And so we're, just wanted to run a date of August 20th by you to see if that's the Thursday prior.
Okay.
Does that sound
I think that,
awesome?
yeah, hopefully that'll work.
We're thinking that that would be a good date. Give them time to prepare enough.
Sure.
8:20. It will be the commission meeting, it will be a regular commission meeting that we're moving in August. So, because the August 25th is during the annual conference.
Yeah.
So we would move the August 25th commission meeting to the August 20th.
That's agreeable to me.
Okay. All right, if there's anything else, Commissioner Hoger, Commissioner Campbell.
No.
Commissioner Schuster.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank everyone, they're amazing. Mayor Pro Tem.
I was gonna ask, with your permission, the public that's seated here, anybody have any ideas, comments?
We probably should since it's not on the agenda, we should save it for the
Okay.
public hearing when we have the ordinance, just because it has to be on the agenda. Otherwise, people could be upset. Yeah, but irregardless, the public is always welcome to comment to us.
Catch us in the hall.
Yes, catch us in the hall, and we'll, or on an email, or on the phone, or in a meeting. Yeah, we can't do a public thing without it. Don't email email you, you'll never get, don't email Commissioner Schuster. Okay, Mr. Scotta, anything further?
No, ma'am, I think we're